Hey guys, so before I get into this video, there's a new little trend I want to start doing. At the beginning of all my videos, I'm going to start giving shoutouts to various channels in Geometry Dash that I think need some more attention for some reason or another. I've been doing these on community posts for the past month or so, but I want to start putting them here so that they're less sporadic and I can sort of stick to a schedule with them. I know that I'm definitely not the biggest channel in GD, but I still really want to give some other channels that I think deserve it some more attention, so that's why I'm doing this. Anyway, for today's shoutout, we have a GD YouTuber who makes somewhat similar videos to mine, even though I admit they're much better edited, and his name is Solaceon. He has only published 3 serious videos so far, but they're all amazing, and I highly recommend going and checking out his latest one at the least, as it's very thought-provoking and promising as to what he will do in the future. He only has about 390 subs at the moment, so I would really hope we can give him a good boost and eventually get him to hit 1K. So yeah, his channel will be linked in the description, and that's all for today's shoutout. Enjoy the video. Geometry Dash levels in culture have almost always revolved around extremely difficult, near impossible levels. Ever since the likes of Cataclysm and Bloodbath, number 1 demons have been a huge unifying element of our community, as they bring hype back to the game and the player base. Levels like Cataclysm were impossible for their time, and to see a demon of that difficulty be legitimately verified was a crazy experience. Of course, we all know the impact that Cataclysm had on the community and how it shaped so many levels today, but unfortunately, the days of hype for semi-silent 1.9 held demons are over. Or so we thought. In the past 2 years, we have seen the rise of a legendary level, a level that dates itself back to before Bloodbath was even conceived as a concept. Previously known as Silent Akbar, this dead project was revived in mid 2.1 by Riot and many other creators, and it was turned into one of the most difficult levels the community had ever seen. The level was a callback to the glory days of hell-themed Silent 1.9 extreme demons, and the monstrous difficulty of this level and the way it was meant to be verified screamed old Silent level. Today, we have seen this level rise to the top as one of the most famous demons of all time, and from the visionaries behind it to the players who took it upon themselves to beat it, this extreme demon has inspired and excited many in the community. Yes, I'm talking about Tartarus, one of the most famous modern-day extreme demons and hardest levels we know today. Tartarus is a very unique and significant level in my eyes, and I've wanted to talk about it for a long time. And so today, we are going to not only talk about its legacy, but its entire history, from its beginnings as an entirely separate level to the way that it was morphed into the serious project we know it as today. I'm also going to talk about the impact that it had in the community when it was first released, the race to beat it, and what it means for us today. With this in mind, we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's not waste any more time. If you guys do enjoy this video, you can always consider subscribing, but there's no pressure. Anyway, with that said, let's take a look at Tartarus' full history, from its conceptualization to the level we know it as today. Tartarus' beginnings date back a very long time ago, all the way back in 1.9, when ICDX was still the hardest demon. As many people know, the level originally did not even go by the name Tartarus, as instead, it was known as Silent Akbar, a semi-impossible extreme demon that was made to be the hardest thing ever conceived. This level was initially made by Riot as a collab with Cyclic and Auroras to be the first extreme demon to top ICDX as the hardest thing ever, and it came even before the likes of Bloodbath. It was themed around a Silent Hell level, obviously taking heavy inspiration from Cataclysm and other silent levels like ICDX and the likes. As I said, the level already consisted of some notable figures, with Riot and Cyclic being 2 obvious ones, but the level would have many other significant players and creators join and leave throughout its lifetime. Only small portions of the gameplay and decoration would be made in the period that the level was alive for the first time, and what was made back then is vastly different from what we know the level as today. Something I think is very interesting is that the gameplay was originally much harder than even Tartarus is today, showing how far-fetched the project was from the start. This is likely the reason that it failed at first, as most of the gameplay was bordering on the humanly impossible. Only some of the original gameplay was kept in the level by the end, and most of the stuff that was originally made was scrapped over time as the level went through different phases. Of course, for one reason or another, this level would die. Again, this was likely due to the fact that it was way too far out of the grasp of the skill level of the community at the time, and even today the original level would be extremely difficult for the best players. As proof of this, the world record when it comes to leaked copies of the original Silent Akbar is only 24%, a record achieved by Trusta. Because of the loss of interest in this project, Riot would soon move on to Bloodbath as the level that would top ICDX as the hardest demon, and before long the level would be forgotten as a distant memory. Even though sparks of hope for the demon were ignited throughout the time after Bloodbath, with sudden determination from various members of the Canalave to finish the level, none of it ever turned into anything, and despite the level being revived numerous times in the coming months after its death, it would seem that nothing would ever bring it back to the spotlight. There were just too many complications. The difficulty was a big one, and even if this level was finished, who could possibly verify such a beast? This is likely a reason why the level kept getting dropped, and if it was ever truly to be verified, it would have likely had to have been at a time where the overall top player skill was much more inflated. However, no one even came close at the time. Riot had just verified Bloodbath, and even that was ridiculously hard for top players, let alone the rest of the community. 1.9 would soon come to an end, and as 2.0 rolled in, Riot would continue to play the game less, and even though he capitalized on his fame after Bloodbath in early 2.0, his waning interest and motivation caused him to quit many times, as we all know. This, of course, left things like Silent Akbar with even less hope of ever being revived, as the main spearheader behind the level had already lost most of his interest in the game, meaning he likely lost interest in ever reviving things like SA. Based on this, it seemed like the level was dead for good, and as 2.0 rolled in and out, nothing really formed to this dead collab. With this in mind, no one could have expected the rise and domination that the level would soon undergo. For the next stages in this level's history, we have to fast forward through 2.0 and find ourselves in January of 2017, at the beginning of 2.1's life. Silent Akbar had been a secret project for all of its life up until this point, with only a select few even knowing of its existence. However, soon the level would be known by many in the community. If you recall from earlier in the video, one of the original 3 players who started the level, besides Riot and Cyclic, was the controversial player Aurorus. Aurorus had always been quite the drama-ridden player, and from his hacking of Sonic Wave Infinity to his constant personality changes and quitting, he was very inconsistent when it came to how and when he played GD. Because of his questionable personality, drama with him was not uncommon, and it was not until long when a drama broke out surrounding Silent Akbar. I'm not 100% sure what happened during this, but what I do know is that it resulted in copies of the layout being leaked, giving the community a first official look at what the level even was. $C would be the first channel to post the full layout, and we finally got to take a look at the gameplay of the level after all of the years of its existence, and we finally saw the incredible difficulty of it. However, despite it being cool that we finally got to take a look at this level after so long, no one really knew what the plan was for this level. Was it aiming to be the new #1 demon? And if it was, who was to verify this beast of an extreme? With no official announcement surrounding it from the hosts and simply a recording of a leaked copy being all we got to see, most people assumed that behind the scenes this level was dead and would never be verified, as the difficulty of it was unimaginable to the community at the time. Of course, in this state it was unfinished, and no one knew if this was to be expected as a serious level or if it was just a dead project being showcased for the hell of it, as the details of the drama with Aurorus that caused it to be leaked were never revealed. Before long, the full decoration of Silent Akbar would be leaked, though the sources of the leak are unknown. The only surviving recording of this leak would be shown on a channel by the name of LTO Ben, uploaded on April 2nd, 2017, though he was likely not the person that recorded the footage. What we see of the decoration in this video is very outdated, as there are a few parts that actually made it into the final level we know today, and it seemed that the level would need numerous gameplay and decoration revamps from here if it wanted to be seriously verified and rated. And the community was left in the dark as to whether these revamps would happen. All we got was this one recording. We would get an answer though. In late 2017, co-host Aurorus would announce a creator contest to build parts on the level as a hope for refurbishing it and giving it new gameplay. However, this never amounted to anything due to his irresponsibility as a host and inconsistency when it came to playing GD. However, this would bring the level back into the eyes of the creators behind it, and unbeknownst to the community, Riot was once again spearheading the collab behind the scenes. He had returned to the game a few times in the time that 2.1 had been underway, and this was one of the things he was working on in the background. Whether this motivation came from Aurorus bringing the level back to his eyes or simply a drive to get the level done matters not. What matters is that the original host was finally back in on the project, and it looked like it had a chance of finally being completed. He previewed it on Halloween of 2017, and he said it was part of the list of projects he wanted to be completed before he retired officially from the game. In its new form, the level had appeared to undergo an entire rebranding. From the name to the gameplay, decoration, and difficulty, this new version of Silent Akbar was dubbed Tartarus, a title we all know very well today. The final version of this extreme demon was finally gaining traction, and it looked like we might actually get to see it released. New creators joined the scene, including End, Comp, and Azuler, and the project was looking promising. An official trailer of the level was released soon after the preview, but we heard nothing of the level after this. However, in January of 2018, seemingly out of nowhere, the level was hack verified and uploaded on Riot's official GD account. It was released not to be rated and placed in the list, but instead to serve as a challenge to the GD community. It was free to copy, and Riot announced that any legitimate victor of the level would receive a shoutout from him personally. Of course, with the official finalized version of the level being released, we finally got to get a good look at what the difficulty of the level was looking like, and what we got to see was mind-blowing. The community had never seen a level of this difficulty at its time of release, and many speculated it would never be verified. The decoration and gameplay were all themed around a Golden Age silent level, with the song being clubstep and all the mechanics revolving around old gameplay styles that were reminiscent in these legendary levels. Overall, this level was looking incredibly difficult, but top players at the time are beginning to try to attempt it. So, let's take a look at some of the early and promising players that led the race to beat this insane level. Despite the hosts of the level, Riot, believing that the eventual verifier of this level would be someone who wasn't even playing Geometry Dash very seriously yet, many top players attempted the challenge soon after its release, and there were some very promising results at first. The best run of the level we saw in the months after its release was 58 to 100 by N level, known as N today, but we all now know that any of his achievements like this were hacked. However, this wasn't evident to the community at the time, and this was some exciting progress that brought hype to the level. Top player combined, verifier of Artificial Ascent and Digital Descent, did a run similar to this, being 58 to 97, unfortunately dying at the last wave. Overall, the second half was seeming much easier than the first, as that was what many top players were getting progress on. However, Combined also got 25% from 0, being the first to progress in the harder parts of the level. More unknown player Joshua also did some nice runs of the level, but overall, many of the top players that seemed to be excited by the level at first eventually lost interest due to the monumental difficulty of it. Wuxi was late to the party and did some runs of the level in the latter half of 2018, but as time passed from here on out, the level was slowly forgotten by most. Most, but not all. Tartarus would phase out of the community for a while, and the community would continue to get occupied with other things. Soon, the level was almost entirely forgotten about, and a year passed until we saw anything on progress when it came to verifying it. That was, until one promising player picked it up on January of 2019. This would be the turning point for the level, and about a year on from its official release, we finally saw someone who looked different from the rest. We saw a player who wasn't nearly as skilled as all the other players who attempted it at first, but he had something the others didn't: a drive and investment in the level, and a level of determination to beat it that matched no one else's. Yes, I'm talking about the player who never gives up himself, Molsi. It was January 3rd, 2018, when he would upload his first progress. From a small corner of the community with a small following and a much smaller Molsi than the one we know today would upload a video. At the time, he would have under 1,000 subs. This video would be a recording of the 32% record on Tartarus he got, and he would title this his first progress video. Unlike many of the other top players we saw attempting the level, Molsi had a different approach. He was far less skilled than any of the contestants that had entered the race before him, as it took him 18,000 attempts to get this far. However, you could feel the determination and drive he had to finish off the level, especially considering the ridiculous amount of attempts he had so far to get such small progress. Despite the insane feat he had achieved on this record, he got little attention. However, this didn't matter to him. He continued on from here, getting a run of 52 to 100 a mere 3 days later as his next progress video. He was starting to attract some attention with shoutouts from some bigger GD YouTubers, and it seemed like to the people who were now following him that he was going to be the verifier. We had found the person who would beat this insane level. And from here on, Molsi's journey to complete Tartarus would begin. His next progress would be 40%, which he would get on June 9th, 36,000 attempts in. He would continue the grind, getting records of 45%, 61%, 64%, and 73%, where he would then take a small break. The 73% record would be on March 8th of 2019, showing the incredible time span that Molsi had been playing the level at this point. There was a 9-month period in between his 40% and 73% progress, but his sheer determination managed to get him there. About a month later, he would get 91%, the closest he had ever gotten to victory. However, it would be 4 months later until the next progress, which would be an amazing run of 21 to 100, showing how close he was to victory. However, considering the incredible amount of time Molsi was taking to beat the level, some other top players revisited it and decided to also give it a shot. It came as a huge surprise to the community when out of nowhere around this time, Metaman Z, a player who has since quit the game entirely, made some amazing practice runs of the level. He only uploaded 1 or 2 videos, saying that beyond those he wouldn't continue, but despite this he kept uploading progress, and people were starting to wonder if Meta was going to steal the crown away from Molsi at the last second. However, playing the level from zero proved to be a big challenge for Meta, and the wall of difficulty that the level concealed until you played to beat it suddenly stopped Meta from progressing, whereas Molsi had already cleared this wall. However, nothing could have prepared him for what came next. On July 26, 2019, Molsi would suffer from a devastating fail of 97% on Tartarus, the worst fail in GD history at the time. This would destroy his motivation to keep playing, and even though he kept at it and continued to try and slay the beast he had started so long ago, nothing worked to get him past this unimaginably difficult blockage. He would go dormant for months at a time, and though he continued uploading other demons and updates on his situation regarding Tartarus, the news wasn't promising. He announced numerous times that he was waiting for the right time and motivation to hit him. And unfortunately, as he lay dormant for so long, another player started to climb the ranks and challenge his name as the unofficial verifier of Tartarus. Dolphy had been climbing the ranks of Geometry Dash for months before he began Tartarus. A mysterious Russian player, he had already cleared levels such as Zodiac, Bloodlust, Crimson Planet, Cognition, and many more. His first progress on Tartarus was a week before Molsi achieved his 97% fail. However, this would be an unimpressive 55% compared to what consistency Molsi had gained, so no one really believed he would beat it before him. However, after Molsi took his extended break after 97%, Dolphy began to progress further on the level. On December 3rd of 2019, after Dolphy had grown significantly since his last progress, he would get a record of 78%, showing that he was once again going for this beast of a level. Dolphy was now much more known as one of the best players in the game when this happened, and as a result, people started to take him seriously and ponder the idea that Dolphy might verify Tartarus before Molsi. However, around this time, Molsi came back to Tartarus via a few YouTube streams, showing that he wasn't giving up just yet, and the race was on. And unfortunately, Molsi could not seem to progress, and Dolphy just kept getting better and better at the level. He achieved 91% in a run of 23-100 in the following weeks, and on December 30th of 2019, he would beat Molsi's death as the worst fail in GD, getting 98% on the level. Though Dolphy took a small break after this and gave Molsi some room to try and beat the level, nothing came of this, and a little over a week later, Dolphy verified the challenge that Riot had imposed upon the community some 2 years ago. However, not all would be accepting of Dolphy's verification. Many members of the community had been suspicious of Dolphy for a long time, and with his newfound attention from his big verification, some top players started to coagulate to form a group that believed Dolphy was a hacker. Many rumors spread around the community after this, and though there was no concrete exposing video, supposedly evidence was being gathered against Dolphy. Dolphy spoke out against this in a video, but it did little good, and the overwhelming majority of the community at this point thought Dolphy was a hacker. It was really a prime example of the way that minds and opinions can be shifted so easily in this community, and I confess that even I was victim to this, as I mistakenly labeled Dolphy as a hacker numerous times when this drama was going on, despite not knowing anything about what the accusations were. Though Dolphy had originally had his version of Tartarus rated and placed instantly at number 1, it was quickly unrated due to the accusations. Eventually, one of the spearheaders of the accusations, End, did a stream that is now unlisted that showed some of the evidence they had gathered. Most of it seemed to sell the community on the idea that Dolphy was a cheater. However, the Demons List did some official tests with private live streams from Dolphy, and proved that they couldn't find any concrete evidence that he was a hacker. And though he is admittedly quite a mysterious figure, no direct incriminating evidence could be found by the List team to out him as a hacker once and for all. But, during this time that Dolphy was under attack and had his version of the level unrated, Molsi would still be playing the level to beat it for himself, not just to verify it. After all, Molsi didn't really care if he verified the level or not. Tartarus is a journey for himself, not a journey to beat it for the clout. And after a month after Dolphy beat it, on February 9th of 2020, Molsi finally cleared the immense challenge he had taken on some 2 years ago. This is an amazing feat that took him some 200,000 attempts, and his version was rated as the new official version of the level with the accusations around Dolphy's legitimacy. However, in the coming days, Dolphy's name would begin to clear up, and when the Demons List published their conclusion that by their standards Dolphy was in fact legitimate, it put Molsi in a tough spot. And at the end of the day, Molsi did the right thing. He got his version of the level unrated and had Dolphy's version rated, giving him the title of the official verifier. And this would be the end of the immediate legacy of this legendary demon. It was placed at number 1 for the final time, and it stood there for a formidable amount of time before it was topped by the Golden. However, this would not be the end of the legacy for this level entirely, as beyond this point, it would continue to affect the community in numerous ways. Tartarus' legacy can be boiled down to many different outcomes. It's an incredibly unique level in concept, and from its initiation some 4 years ago to its final version now, it has inspired and awed many members of the community. I believe Tartarus is a very significant representation of how future difficulty might be farther beyond our comprehension than we can even imagine, as the verification of this level was inconceivable some 2 years ago when it was challenged by Riot, whereas now the level has 6 victors and some amazing progress from other top players. I really think that this level is also a great representation of one of the most inspiring stories in Geometry Dash. The way such an unknown player such as Molsi used this incredibly difficult demon as a platform to grow not only his channel, but himself as a person is something that I really think proves that JD is so much more than just a simple indie platformer. It's truly a way for players to discover themselves and their limits, and push their boundaries farther than they could ever have imagined. This legendary demon has come such a long way from its beginnings, and it has inspired and caused so much growth and progression towards this game that I think people give it credit for. Tartarus really is one of the most historical and noteworthy levels to ever exist in this game, and from its thematic callback to the legendary days of silent levels to the unimaginable difficulty and challenge that dominated the community when the level was first released, this extreme demon will be remembered as one of the most famous of all time. It will undoubtedly go down as one for the history books, and recapping its tale from such humble beginnings has been an experience that I have duly enjoyed embarking upon. I hope you all learned something, and I hope you also enjoyed revisiting all of the events in this extreme demon's history. This level won't be forgotten, and it will be recollected as one of the most significant of its time and in the history of this game. Well, that's all I have for this video. This was a very difficult video for me to make, as I had to spend hours researching the order of events for how this level was created, so I hope it was well worth it. If you guys enjoyed it, you could always consider subscribing and leaving a like, but there's no pressure. I really believe in the importance of this level, as it's a one-of-a-kind extreme demon, so I've been glad to recap its tale and give it justice. As much as this video was difficult to make, it was very satisfying to see it all come together, so I hope it satisfies you guys too. Anyway, I hope you all learned something about Tartarus and the significance of it, and I hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you all so much for sticking through it this far. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.